The atmosphere on the set of The View was electric as Julia Roberts, the Oscar-winning actress known for her dazzling smile and quick wit, settled into her seat at the table. The audience buzzed with anticipation, eager to hear from one of Hollywood's most beloved stars. But as the cameras started rolling, it quickly became clear that this would be no ordinary interview. The hosts, as always, began with the usual pleasantries and softball questions. They asked about Julia's latest project, her family, her thoughts on the current state of the movie industry. She answered with grace and humor, her trademark charm on full display. But then, almost imperceptibly, the tone of the conversation began to shift. It started with a question from Sunny Hostin, who leaned forward with a serious expression on her face. "Julia," she said, "you've been in this business for a long time. You've seen a lot of changes, a lot of ups and downs. What do you think about the way women are treated in Hollywood today?" Julia paused, considering her words carefully. "I think," she said slowly, "that we've made some progress. But there's still a long way to go. There are still too many stories of harassment, of discrimination, of women being shut out of opportunities just because of their gender." The audience murmured in agreement, but Meghan McCain, never one to shy away from a debate, jumped in. "But Julia," she said, "don't you think that things have gotten better? That the Me Too movement has made a real difference?" Julia's eyes narrowed slightly. "The Me Too movement has been important," she said, choosing her words with deliberate care. "But it's not enough. We need real, systemic change. We need to address the power imbalances, the culture of silence, the way that women are still objectified and marginalized in this industry." There was a moment of tense silence as the host digested her words. Then Joy Behar, always ready with a quip, tried to lighten the mood. "Well," she said with a chuckle, "at least you've managed to have an incredible career despite all of that, right?" But Julia didn't smile. Instead, she leaned forward, her gaze intense. "I've been lucky," she said, her voice low and serious. "But luck shouldn't be a factor. Talent should be the only thing that matters. And the fact that it's not, the fact that so many brilliant women are still being held back and held down, is a travesty." The audience erupted in applause, but the hosts looked taken aback. This wasn't the light, frothy conversation they had been expecting. Ana Navarro, sensing the tension, tried to steer the discussion in a different direction. "Speaking of brilliant women," she said, "let's talk about your work with UNICEF. You've been a Goodwill ambassador for years now. What has that experience been like?" Julia's expression softened slightly. "It's been one of the great privileges of my life," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "To be able to use my platform, my voice, to advocate for children who don't have a voice of their own. To see the impact that even small actions can have on their lives. It's been humbling and inspiring." The audience applauded again, but Whoopi Goldberg, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "But Julia," she said, "don't you ever feel like it's not enough? Like no matter how much you do, there's always more suffering, more injustice in the world?" Julia nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Every day," she said softly. "Every single day. But that's why we have to keep going. Why we have to keep fighting. Because if we don't, who will?" There was a moment of profound silence as her words hung in the air. Then, abruptly, Meghan McCain spoke up again. "But what about the criticism?" she asked, her tone almost accusatory. "What about the people who say that celebrities should stay in their lane, that they shouldn't get involved in politics or activism?" Julia's head snapped up, her eyes flashing with anger. "Excuse me," she said, her voice low and dangerous. Meghan faltered slightly, but pressed on. "I'm just saying," she said, "that some people think that actors should stick to acting, that when you start speaking out on issues, you're overstepping your bounds." Julia stared at her for a long moment, her expression a mix of disbelief and fury. "Are you serious right now?" she asked, her words clipped and sharp. "Are you really suggesting that because I have a successful career, I don't have the right to speak my mind? To use my platform for something more than just entertainment?" Meghan opened her mouth to respond, but Julia cut her off. "No," she said, her voice rising with each word. "I will not be silenced. I will not be told to stay in my lane. I am a human being, with thoughts and opinions and the right to express them, and I will not apologize for that. The audience was stunned into silence, but the hosts looked like they had been slapped. Whoopi tried to interject, to calm the situation, but Julia was on a roll. "You know what?" she said, standing up abruptly. "I'm done. I'm done with this interview, and I'm done with this show." She yanked the microphone from her blouse and tossed it onto the table. "I came here today," she said, her voice shaking with emotion, "to have a real conversation, to talk about the things that matter to me, the issues that I care about. But all you seem interested in is gossip and sound bites and stirring up controversy." She shook her head in disgust. "Well, I won't be a part of it. I won't sit here and be attacked for having the audacity to care about something more than just myself." She turned to the audience, her eyes blazing. "And to all of you out there," she said, pointing at the camera, "don't let anyone tell you that you don't have a voice, that you don't have the right to speak up, to stand up for what you believe in. Because you do. We all do." With that, she turned on her heel and stormed off the set, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. The audience sat in shocked disbelief, unsure of how to react. The hosts looked at each other, their faces a mix of confusion and chagrin. But backstage, Julia was shaking with adrenaline and emotion. Her publicist rushed up to her, concern etched on her face. "Julia," she said, "what happened out there? Are you okay?" Julia took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "No," she said honestly. "I'm not okay. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I'm tired of being told to sit down and shut up, to stay in my lane and stick to what I know." She looked at her publicist, her eyes fierce with determination. "But I'm also more sure than ever that I'm doing the right thing. That speaking out, using my platform for something bigger than myself, is what I'm meant to do." Her publicist nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Well then," she said, "let's go show the world what Julia Roberts is really made of." In the days and weeks that followed, the clip of Julia's walkout went viral. It was played and replayed on news shows and talk shows, dissected by pundits and commentators. Some praised her for her bravery, for her willingness to speak truth to power. They saw her as a hero, a champion for the voiceless and the marginalized. Others criticized her for being too political, for overstepping her bounds as an entertainer. They accused her of being divisive, of sowing discord in an already fractured society. But Julia paid them no mind. She continued to speak out, to use her platform to advocate for the causes she believed in. She gave interviews and speeches, attended rallies and protests. She met with activists and lawmakers, lent her voice and her resources to the fight for justice and equality. And slowly but surely, something began to shift. More and more people began to listen, to pay attention to the issues that Julia was raising. They started to see her not just as a pretty face on a screen, but as a passionate, intelligent woman with something important to say. Other celebrities, inspired by her example, began to speak out as well. They used their own platforms to amplify marginalized voices, to call attention to the injustices and inequalities that had long been ignored. And as the movement grew, as more and more people joined the fight, Julia felt a sense of hope and purpose that she had never known before. She knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, that there would be setbacks and challenges at every turn. But she also knew that she was not alone, that there were millions of people out there who shared her vision, who were ready and willing to fight alongside her. And so she pressed on, head held high, voice strong and clear, because she knew that this was her calling, her purpose, to use her gifts, her talents, her platform, to make the world a better place. One interview at a time, one speech at a time, one walkout at a time. She was Julia Roberts, and she was just getting started.